The Alchemist, a storytelling summary. By Paulo Coelho, narrated summary. Part 1. The Boy with a Dream. There was once a boy named Santiago. He was a shepherd in the beautiful fields of Andalusia, Spain. Every night he slept under the stars with his flock, using old books as his pillow. He was young, free and curious about the world. He had left a seminary, where his parents had hoped he would become a priest, just to wander, to explore and to live. But one night, curled up inside a ruined church where a great sycamore tree had grown through the old walls, Santiago had a dream. And then he had the same dream again. In the dream, a child appeared among his sheep, took him by the hand and carried him all the way to the pyramids of Egypt. The child pointed to the ground and said, "Here, if you come, you will find a hidden treasure." But every time, just before the child could show him the exact spot, Santiago woke up. The dream haunted him. So when his travels brought him to the small town of Tarifa, he decided to visit an old woman who interpreted dreams. She took his hands, studied them and said simply, "You must go to the pyramids of Egypt. There you will find a treasure that will make you a rich man." But she charged him nothing. Instead, she asked for 1/10 of the treasure if he found it. Santiago walked away annoyed. That was all. He didn't need to visit a dream reader for such a simple answer. He decided to forget about it. He sat down in the town plaza with a new book and tried to read. That's when an old man sat beside him. Part 2. The King of Salem. The old man was strange. He wore ordinary clothes, but something about him shone, literally. A flash of brilliant light came from beneath his cloak. He began talking to Santiago about his life. He spoke as if he already knew everything, the seminary, the sheep, Santiago's restless heart. And then the old man said something that stopped the boy cold. "You have succeeded in discovering your personal legend." Santiago didn't know what that meant. The old man explained, "A personal legend is what you have always wanted to accomplish. When we are young, we know our personal legend clearly. Everything seems possible. But as time passes, a mysterious force convinces us that it is impossible. People get used to their lives. The baker who dreamed of travel never travels. The merchant who dreamed of Mecca never goes. And that's the world's greatest lie," the old man said. "That at some point we lose control of our lives and fate takes over." Santiago felt something awaken inside him. The old man then revealed himself. He was Melchizedek, the king of Salem. He gave Santiago 2 stones from his golden breastplate, one white, one black. They were called Urim and Thummim. Yes and no. When Santiago could not read the omens around him, these stones would help. But his instruction was one thing above all. Follow your personal legend. Follow the omens. And remember, when you truly want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it. The price, 1/10 of his flock, 6 sheep. The next morning, Santiago sold the rest of his sheep, crossed the sea from Spain, and arrived in the strange, buzzing port city of Tangier, in Africa. Part 3. Betrayal and Beginning Again. Tangier was nothing like Andalusia. The streets were narrow and crowded. People spoke Arabic. The smells were foreign, the sounds were foreign. Santiago felt lost and small. Then a young man appeared, speaking Spanish. He seemed friendly. He offered to be Santiago's guide to Egypt. Santiago, relieved, handed over all his money so they could buy camels for the journey across the desert. Then, in the middle of the busy marketplace, Santiago paused to admire a beautiful sword. And when he turned around, his guide was gone. All his money gone. Santiago sat alone in the empty marketplace as the sun set. He had nothing. No money, no guide, no sheep, no home nearby, just a jacket, a book, and 2 stones. He wept. He felt God had been unfair. He had believed in his dream and it had led him here, to this empty plaza in a foreign land, robbed and alone. But then, slowly, something shifted inside him. He looked at Urim and Thummim. He asked, "Is the old king's blessing still with me?" He reached into the bag and pulled out the white stone. "Yes. I'm not a poor victim," he told himself. "I'm an adventurer in search of treasure." The next morning he walked through the market and helped a candy seller set up his stall. The candy seller smiled, that same warm, full smile of a man living his purpose. And Santiago noticed. The 2 of them had spoken different languages, yet they had understood each other perfectly. There must be a language that doesn't depend on words, Santiago thought. He found a crystal shop on a hilltop. The owner was an old Muslim merchant, tired, resigned to a life that had grown smaller and smaller. Santiago offered to clean the dusty glass in the window in exchange for food. As he cleaned, 2 customers came in and bought pieces for the first time in a long while. The merchant offered him a job. Part 4. The Crystal Merchant. Santiago worked in the crystal shop for 11 months. In that time he transformed the business completely. He suggested selling tea in crystal glasses, drawing tired travelers up the hill with the promise of refreshment, then tempting them with the beauty of the glassware. He suggested a display case at the entrance. He learned Arabic. He learned the language of commerce. The merchant, a quiet and faithful man, had spent 30 years dreaming of making the pilgrimage to Mecca, the fifth obligation of every Muslim. But he had never gone. He was afraid that if he went, his greatest dream would be over, that he would have nothing left to live for. "It's the thought of Mecca that keeps me alive," he told Santiago. Santiago understood what the old king had warned about. The baker, the merchant, people who preferred the safety of a dream over the risk of living it. By the end of 11 months, Santiago had saved enough money to buy 120 sheep, even more than he had started with. He could return to Spain. He could be a shepherd again. He had learned Arabic, learned business, learned resilience. In some ways, he had already found a kind of treasure. But then, one morning, he found the 2 stones in his old pouch. Urim and Thummim. He remembered the king, he remembered the pyramids. He thought, I can always go back to being a shepherd, but I may never again have a chance to go to Egypt. He made his decision. He joined a caravan crossing the Sahara. Part 5: The Desert and the Englishman. The caravan was enormous, nearly 200 people, 400 animals. Camels, horses, mules, merchants, pilgrims and soldiers. On board, Santiago met an Englishman, a serious, bookish man searching for an alchemist said to live at Al-Fum Oasis. The Englishman believed in a universal language, the soul of the world that connected all things. He had spent years studying alchemy, searching for the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. Santiago read the Englishman's books. He learned that alchemists believed if you purified metals long enough, heated them and refined them, they shed their individual qualities and revealed the soul of the world, the language through which all things communicated. The ultimate achievement was the master work, a solid, the philosopher's stone, which could turn any metal to gold, and a liquid, the elixir of life, which could cure all illness and grant immortality. But where the Englishman read books, Santiago watched the caravan. He listened to the camel drivers. He felt the rhythm of the desert. He understood, without being able to explain it, that the caravan and the desert spoke to each other, that the desert tested every step, and only those who listened could find water and safety. I'd better pay more attention to the caravan, the Englishman admitted one night. And I'd better read your books, said Santiago. The caravan moved cautiously. There were tribal wars in the desert. Hooded Bedouin scouts appeared and disappeared. At night, fires were hidden. Armed riders circled in the dark. And then, after many weeks, the oasis appeared. Al-Fum, 300 wells, 50,000 palm trees, a vast, alive, breathing city in the middle of the sand. Part 6: Fatima. At the oasis, while the Englishman searched for the alchemist, Santiago went to the well. And there he saw her, a young woman with a vessel on her shoulder, dark eyes, a face half covered, half open. She smiled. And Santiago felt in that single moment, that time had stopped. This was not like the merchant's daughter back in Spain. This was something else entirely, something ancient, something written. What's your name? He asked. Fatima, she said, looking away. He came back to the well every day. He told her about his life, the sheep, the king, the crystal shop, the desert. And slowly they fell in love. But the war in the desert showed no sign of ending. The caravan was stranded. And Santiago, sitting one afternoon on the rocks outside the oasis, watched 2 hawks circle the sky and suddenly saw a vision. An army approaching, swords drawn, riding toward the oasis. He reported this to the tribal chieftains, who at first were skeptical. But they were men of the desert. They respected omens, they listened. The next day, 500 enemy tribesmen rode into Al-Fum, only to find themselves surrounded. The oasis was prepared. The attack was repelled. And Santiago was given 50 gold pieces and offered a permanent position as counselor of the oasis. That night, a terrifying horseman appeared, dressed entirely in black, with a falcon on his shoulder, a sword drawn and gleaming in the moonlight. He pressed the blade to Santiago's forehead. Who dares to read the flight of the hawks? I do, said Santiago without flinching. The horseman lowered his sword. He smiled behind his veil. Courage is the quality most essential to understanding the language of the world. He was the alchemist. Come find me, he said, if your head is still on your shoulders at sunset. Part 7: The Alchemist. The alchemist lived in a simple tent at the edge of the oasis. surrounded by only a few books and a small cooking stove. He told Santiago plainly, "Your treasure is at the pyramids. I will guide you across the desert." But Santiago hesitated. He had Fatima. He had gold, he had a respected position. Was any treasure worth leaving all this? The alchemist told him what would happen if he stayed. In the first year you'll be happy. In the second year the omens will begin to speak of treasure again. In the third year you'll walk the desert at night and wonder if you made a mistake. And in the fourth year the omens will abandon you because you stopped listening. You'll be rich, but you'll know you didn't follow your personal legend. And then, gently but firmly, love never keeps a man from his personal legend. If it does, it was never true love. Santiago went to Fatima before dawn. He told her he was leaving and that he was coming back. "I'll be waiting," she said. "I am a woman of the desert, I know how to wait." Part 8. Across the desert. The boy and the alchemist rode together for days. The alchemist taught without teaching. He simply was alert, present, reading every sign the desert offered. He showed Santiago how to find life in the barren sands, a cobra beneath a rock, found by instinct alone. He taught him that the heart must be listened to, even when it is afraid, even when it lies, even when it weeps. "Tell your heart," the alchemist said one night under a moonless sky, "that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself." Santiago began to understand. He stopped fighting his heart. He made peace with it. And in that peace the heart spoke more clearly than it ever had, telling him of his courage, warning him of dangers and leading him forward. They were stopped by tribesmen, accused of spying. The alchemist gave away all of Santiago's gold, everything he had saved, to buy them 3 days. And then he announced to the tribal chief that the boy was an alchemist who could turn himself into the wind. Santiago had never felt more terrified in his life. "I don't know how to turn myself into the wind," he whispered. "If you live your personal legend," said the alchemist, "you already know everything you need to know." Part 9. Becoming the wind. For 3 days, Santiago sat on the cliffs above the camp and thought. On the third day, surrounded by the chief and his men, he began to speak to the desert, to the wind, to the sun. He asked each of them, in the language he had spent his whole journey learning, to help him. The desert said, "I can give you my sands, but I cannot do it alone. Ask the wind." The wind said, "I can blow and shake the world, but I don't know how to turn a man into the wind. Ask the sun." The sun said, "I know about love, but even I don't know how to do this. Ask the hand that wrote all things." And so Santiago turned in silence to the greatest force of all. He prayed not with words or requests, but with love. He opened his heart to the soul of the world. He understood in that moment that the desert, the wind, the sun, and the boy were all made of the same thing, all written by the same hand. And the wind blew. When the storm cleared, Santiago was standing on the far side of the camp. The men stared in silence. The chief bowed his head. The alchemist smiled. Part 10. The treasure. The alchemist escorted Santiago to the edge of the desert. At a Coptic monastery, he demonstrated alchemy for the last time, transforming lead into gold before Santiago's eyes, dividing it into 4 parts. For the monk, for Santiago, for himself, and one left in safekeeping in case Santiago ever needed it. "You already know how to find your treasure," the alchemist said. "Your heart will tell you where." They said goodbye. Santiago rode alone to the pyramids. When he crested the last dune and saw them, those ancient, solemn monuments rising from the sand in the moonlight, he fell to his knees and wept. He had made it. He began to dig where his tears fell. He dug all night, driven by faith, exhausted but certain. Then strangers appeared in the dark, refugees from the war, desperate and dangerous. They beat him, robbed him of his gold, and forced him to keep digging. He found nothing. As they left, their leader sneered. "You're not going to die, but you're a fool. I once had a dream too, a recurrent dream that told me to travel to Spain, to a ruined church with a sycamore growing through the sacristy. It said if I dug at the roots of that tree, I'd find a hidden treasure. But I'm not stupid enough to cross a desert for a dream." And then they were gone. Santiago stood up slowly. His face was bloodied. His hands were torn, but he was smiling. Because now he knew exactly where his treasure was. Epilogue. Coming home. Santiago sailed back to Spain. He walked through the fields of Andalusia, back to the ruined church where it had all begun, where the sycamore grew through the old sacristy walls, where he had once slept as a shepherd with his flock. He dug at the roots of the tree. Half an hour later, his shovel struck something hard. A chest. Inside, Spanish gold coins, precious stones, gold masks adorned with red and white feathers. The ancient spoils of a forgotten conquest, a treasure waiting centuries to be claimed. Santiago laughed and cried at the same time. He placed Urim and Thummim inside the chest. The stones had guided him when he was lost. Now they would rest here, as a reminder of the old king who had set him on his path. He gathered his treasure. He would honor his promise, 1/10 to the gypsy dream reader in Tarifa. And then he would go back across the sea, back through the desert, back to Al-Fayum, back to the well where 50,000 palm trees grew and a woman waited, watching the horizon every day with hope. A breeze picked up the Levant blowing in from Africa, but this time it carried something different, not the smell of sand or war. It carried a perfume he knew, and a kiss soft and warm that came from far away and finally rested on his lips. "I'm coming, Fatima," Santiago whispered, and he smiled. The heart of the story. The Alchemist is not really about gold or pyramids. It is about the courage to listen to your heart, the courage to leave the familiar behind, the courage to keep going when you've been robbed, beaten and lost, because the universe is not punishing you. It is preparing you. Every person you meet on your journey is a teacher. Every setback is a test. Every omen, the flight of hawks, the shimmer of a stone, the smile of a stranger, is the universe whispering, you are on the right path. And when you truly want something, with your whole heart, without fear, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it. Maktub, it is written. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist,